Hello everybody, it's Donna. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. So it's time to grab a coffee or a glass of wine and sit back and relax because this video is going to be a little bit longer than normal. Today's video is a follow-up to the previous video I did using the Gorgeous Posies Project Kit, where I showed you how to make the cards out of that gorgeous little project kit that we have on page 8 of the new annual catalog, 2021 annual catalog. Today I'm not using anything from the kit, but I am using the Gorgeous Posies Stamp Set, which is purchased separately from the kit. I'm going to start with the simplest card. Today I wanted something very simple where you just needed stamp paper and ink. And I think this one did quite well meeting those goals. I'm using the flower, the posy from the set. I'm also using some Bumblebee ink as well as cardstock. I'm just going to stamp this posy right in the center of a 5 1/4 by 4 piece of Whisper White. You will need 2 sheets of those. One's going to be for the inside, one's for the outside. I'm going to stamp this more towards the top, not quite in the center. And we're just going to stamp that also on the inside piece, down in the bottom right-hand corner. And then I'm going to take the sentiment. I'm going to use the same sentiment for all 3 cards. It's the one that says, "For a very kind and thoughtful friend." And I'm going to center that on my block and then stamp it right underneath the flower using Memento Tuxedo Black. I just like to test it off to the side to make sure that my sentiment is lined up. Now making sure my cardstock is straight and then centering it right underneath the flower. Now we have to put the centers of the flowers in. I'm just using my finger as a stamp block. It's so tiny, it just makes it easier for me to control it anyways. And I'm using soft suede for this card, for the centers. Now you'll notice that I actually forgot to stamp the other one for the inside, but I'll come back to that later. Using some Post-it tape, I'm just masking off part of the card front, the back of the card front, because I'm going to stamp just kind of a simple border all the way around the outside edge using the Bumblebee ink and the Posy stamp. You're not going to really see the whole flower. I just wanted some texture in the background, and this made it pretty simple to do. Didn't bother stamping the center because you're not going to see it. And then carefully remove the Post-it tape, because Post-it tape is a little bit different, so the ink might be still a little bit wet, so you don't want to smear that on your card. Now I'm simply going to attach the front of the card using Tombow Mono liquid adhesive. You can also use your tape runner if you prefer. Just got a little bit of ink on there. I'm just using a sand eraser to get rid of that. And smooth it out with a regular eraser. Now I'm just going to attach the inside of the card using the same glue. Now for some embellishments. For this card, I'm using the new enamel dots in the ink colors, in Bumblebee, obviously. And I'm just going to sprinkle a couple of them around. I tried to keep an odd number and usually in some kind of visual triangle. Okay, moving on to our second card. Our second card is using Mango Melody. This is a vibrant orange. Every time I see it, I actually can smell oranges. It's so vibrant. We're going to be using the Ornate Floral 3D embossing folder. We're going to take one piece of Whisper White that is your standard mat size, 5 1/4 by 4. And I'm just going to run that through my die cutting machine off to the side. And there it is. It's so pretty. It's so delicate, those flowers. You will also need a piece of cardstock in Mango Melody, 4 1/4 by 11, scored at 5 1/2 to form a side folding card. You will also need a piece of DSP. I'm just using some DSP from last year in Mango Melody in 5 3/8 by 4 1/8. That will just mat behind the embossed piece. Then you will also need some scrap of white as well as a piece of Whisper White in 5 1/4 by 4. Now on the scrap, we're going to stamp the posy 3 times in Mango Melody. And then we're going to take the inside piece and just stamp it once at the bottom, just like we did on the original card, the first card. Now we're going to take the stamp in soft suede, the stamp for the center in soft suede, and just like we did for the first card, we're going to stamp it in each of those centers. Here is where I realized I didn't stamp the other inside card. I'm just going to grab the card and do it while I have the stamp out. Now you need a piece of Mango Melody. It will be 5 1/4 by 1 inch. You'll also need a piece of Whisper White, which is going to be 5 inches by 3/4 of an inch. We're going to take the Banners Pick-a-Punch, which you will find on page 65 of the mini catalog, the August to December 2020 mini catalog. And I'm going to use just the arrow part, or the first part, the banner part, to punch both sides of these strips. And this will just form a nice little place for my sentiment. Now on the white, I'm going to take some Memento Tuxedo Black and stamp the same sentiment, just basically right in the center. Now you will see that I felt it wasn't quite centered, so I flipped it over and did it again, and that one was worse, so I just went back and used the original one. Once I put the embellishments on, you won't really notice I didn't do it perfectly. I'm just going to begin to glue the card together, gluing the inside with some Tombow Mono liquid glue, the DSP piece, and then the embossed piece. Once that's done, I'm going to take the banner and glue that down onto the Mango Melody banner. And that's going to be attached to the front of my card using dimensionals. Now I need to take those 3 posies that we stamped, and I'm just going to simply cut them out. It didn't take that long to cut them out. It seriously didn't. It's only a couple minutes, and I hate fussy cutting, but it didn't really take that long to do. Once those are all done, you're going to take a marker or a sponge dauber and just sponge some color onto the edge. I just find by doing this, it gets rid of any, or it makes any cutting issues not so noticeable. Now I'm using my Stampin' Up marker in Mango Melody, but you could just use a sponge dauber if you like. I just got all my markers, so I was excited to actually have a use for them. When they're side by side and one's done and one's not, you can really see the difference this makes. Once that's done, I'm just going to glue 2 of them down to each edge of the card and leaving the center empty because we're going to pop that one up. Okay, so I glued those 2 down. Now I'm going to take the remaining one. I just have my stamp blocks on there, holding them down flat just for a minute. Putting a dimensional on the back of the center one, and then I'm going to stick that right down in between the 2. For this card, I decided to use just some simple rhinestones. They're I think they might be champagne colored. I'm not really sure. And again, doing it in kind of a visual triangle, just around my sentiment, hoping that it will cover up that my sentiment was a little bit crooked, or not so much that it was crooked, it really wasn't in the center. And there's that card completed. Now we're going to move on to the final card. The final card uses basically Highland Heather. You need a piece of cardstock, Highland Heather cardstock, 5.5 by 8.5, scored at 4 1/4 to form a, it's going to be a top folding card. You need 2 pieces of Whisper White, 5 1/4 by 4, one for the inside, one for the outside. You will need some scrap Whisper White as well. And then you need a piece of Highland Heather just for the banner, 5 1/4 by 3/4 inches. This card is probably the most complicated of all of them, as it involves masking and heat embossing. Now I just need a piece of scrap just big enough for a stitched rectangle for our sentiment to fit inside that stitched rectangle. I know that that's the one that will fit. I'm not sure which embellishment I'm going to use, so I did bring the twine out from the kit, but I'm not using that one. To start, we're going to use the Posy stamp as well as Highland Heather ink. And for the inside, we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to stamp down on the corner. And then I'm just going to put that one off to the side for now. And then for the other one, which is going to be the front of the card, I'm just going to stamp on the 4 corners one of these posies, and then in between, but not as big or is not as far up, I'm going to stamp the other ones. Just kind of trims it or all the way around the outside. Now, because we actually have to do some layering, because I do want some leaves in there as well, I'm going to stamp one onto a Post-it note. I also did stamp a leaf because I wasn't sure if I was going to have to mask the leaf or not. Turns out I didn't need to, so I'm just going to stamp that in the leaf, and I'm going to put those off to the side just to let them dry a few seconds so I don't smear ink on anything. Now I'm just kind of drying my card base. I just wanted to make sure it was absolutely dry because I'm going to be doing some heat embossing. So I just took the heat tool to it for a couple of seconds. And then I'm using my anti-static powder tool across the top. And then using Versamark, I'm going to stamp the center of the flowers. Instead of using soft suede, I'm going to use Versamark because I actually want them in gold because I want some gold on this card. So we're going to use that stamp and Versamark and stamp them all the flowers. I found it was going to be easier doing it this way than stamping the leaves first, even though I kind of went back and forth. Once that's done, just sprinkle on some embossing powder, the gold embossing powder. Tap it off, and I'm going to take a little brush to some spots that it appeared that there was sprinkles of gold there, and I don't want to heat and set that, so just using a little brush to get rid of that. And then I'm going to heat set that with my heat tool. This makes this card very elegant, actually. And I'm going to do the same thing just for the inside of the card. Now I'm going to take my Post-it note and I am going to cut out the posy. Now I'm cutting out, well, it turns out I only had 2 sheets left. If I had more, I would have cut out 3 at the same time. This means I only had to cut it once, but have 3 masks made of it. And because of what we're doing, it would be easier to have more than, well, you need at least 2, but it would have been a lot easier if I had more sheets, but I didn't have more sheets. Now I'm just going to cut that out, and now I'm going right on the inside of the stamp image, not on the outside, because I know there's going to be a little ledge there because there's dimension on the Post-it note. Not much dimension, but there is a little bit, so you could end up with a little halo that you might not want. So cutting that out, and then I'm going to, I didn't end up cutting out the leaf because I figured I might not need it. Separating those 2 pieces, and then I'm going to put them down on top of the flowers that we just did. Just trying to line it up. I don't know why it was giving me trouble, that one, but, and then doing the one next to it as well, because we're going to stamp the leaf in between it. And I want the leaves to be in the background, not in the foreground. So anything that I mask will be in the front. And I'm just moving the one mask over, and I'm going to do that all the way around. Just stamp the leaf and then move the one over. You just have to be really careful because the ink could be wet and you don't want to get that green ink all over your card. This is quite the process, but the card at the end is stunning. All of these cards can be used for different reasons, even like a birthday card, a Mother's Day card, lots of different reasons you could use these. Just a note card. Okay, now the leaf has the little veins in it that I'm going to do in gold as well. So now I have to go back, and I was hoping I wouldn't have to mask the flowers again, but they do overlap the veins sometimes with the flowers, and I don't want that. So I did go back and use my mask to very gently cover up my flowers. And then use that little stamp, well, anti-static powder tool first, and then use that stamp with my finger just to stamp them on. But I did have to do the same thing, move all the masks around so that I could stamp each leaf separately. Once that's done, I'm just going to add the powder, the embossing powder to it, the gold embossing powder. I just noticed I missed one. So added it on, and then just used a brush to sprinkle away or to wipe away any additional powder I didn't want. And then heat set that as well. I'm just going to stamp the sentiment, the same sentiment, on that piece of scrap Whisper White and Memento Tuxedo Black. I do have a bow ready because I decided I'm going to use a bow for the embellishment. Going to cut that out using one of the stitched rectangles. I'm not sure which one this is, but you can tell it just fits right nicely around the sentiment. I'm just taping it with a little bit of removable tape because I'm going to move it. Usually I would do this right on my die cutting machine. And there we go, all nicely die cut out. And now we're going to have to form the banner that's going to go underneath. Now this one I'm actually using both sides, so it's actually going to look like a banner on this one. So I'm using the arrow part and then the banner part. It's as if it's pointing to the right. I absolutely love this punch. I think it'd be very handy for a lot of different sentiments. Not just sentiments, but even elements on a card. And using some Tombow Mono liquid glue, I'm just going to attach my card front to my card base. I've already attached the inside. I'm going to take the white Whisper White piece, just put a little bit of glue in the center, attach it to the banner, and then using dimensionals, just attach that to the front of the card. Once that's done, I have to decide what extra bling I might like. I did have these old enamel dots from a previous catalog, which would match. The kind, I don't know if it's Highland Heather or Grapefruit Grove or Gorgeous Grape that they're in, but I just found it would clash too much with the gold. So I'm going to go with some gold sequins, and just that way they don't really clash. Just again, going to attach 3 of them in a rough triangle. Now I'm going to take the bow and attach that just using some mini glue dots. Just going to attach it right to the bottom of the banner. And that completes the card. I find it absolutely stunning. So these are the 3 cards that we made today using the Gorgeous Posies Stamp Set. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will catch you next time. Please subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified each time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.